Have you done a stool test before? If your doctor has run that for you and they said there's nothing going on, let me tell you, it's very important to run an advanced, very specific stool test to determine why you have heartburn. So on this video today, we're going to talk about those markers and what you need to know about the correct stool testing that's going to get that done. Now, I'm going to go through these markers. Just be aware that at the end of this video, I want you to hang tight with me because at the end of this, I'm going to give you an offer to get this specific stool test done. So that way you can find out exactly why you might be having heartburn and you can't get rid of it. Okay? So first and foremost, the stool testing that the traditional medicine doctor will run, if you go to the GI doctor in particular, is it's a basic test. They have you poop. They test that poop and they look at it, but there's only a few markers that they're looking at. And what they are running is based on what insurance will pay for. And that is one of the biggest reasons why, just in general, health care is poor and doesn't get the results oftentimes for patients that we need in this country. Our test that we like to use here in functional medicine has way more testing protocols and markers that we look for. Health insurance doesn't pay for it, but you get the answers that you're looking for. So let's go through those. There's some very specific things with a stool test that we want to look at. Now remember, with a stool test, we are usually looking at not just the components of an organism, like let's say Candida, for example, or just a bacterial infection. Where we want to see, like you would at a crime scene when you're trying to detect who committed a crime, we're looking for DNA. And the reason that I love using the stool test that we use is it utilizes this thing called PCR technology, polymerase chain reaction technology. Now, my background is in genetics, and so we learned how to use this 30 years ago in utilizing the DNA of a organism, or in this case, in the sample of stool, we can tell if there's any detection of that organism just by looking at all the little DNA snippets using this technology. So, some of the ones we want to see in terms of why you have heartburn, H. pylori. It's a bacteria, lives in the stomach, decreases your stomach acids. And if you have questions about that or you've never heard of that before, please go to my other videos. I have a lot of videos on H. pylori, how it affects the body, and more importantly, how it causes your heartburn. This is an excellent test for determining if you have H. pylori. Now, traditional medicine, in their testing, oftentimes they don't even look at this. They just put you through a breath test. They have you breathe into a bag. They test to see if you have that. Now, the problem with that is H. pylori lives in the stomach. It can burrow its way into the stomach wall and not be hanging out in the middle. So if you have a H. pylori infection, but it's kind of burrowed itself into the stomach and it's kind of hanging out there, when you do the breath test, you don't get a lot of the H. pylori buildup through your breath because it's hanging out in the gut lining. It's not interacting with your food or in the middle of the stomach. So you get a lot of false negatives. GI doc says, you don't have H. pylori. And you do. And this test is really good to determine whether you do or don't. Okay? Number 2. Bacteria, most commonly known as SIBO. Small intestine, bacterial overgrowth. There's a lot of different bacteria that can cause this issue. Gram-positive, gram-negative, anaerobic. Not important to get into them. Just realize that every single one of the important ones that can cause this, we test for. All right? Number 3, Candida. Not a bacteria, a fungus, also known as yeast. This can overgrow in the body. This can cause heartburn. Any of these things can overgrow and cause your body's inability to push food down, and it forces things back the opposite direction, creating heartburn. Okay? This test is fantastic at treating this and parasites. Not always common with heartburn, but can be, and we look for those as well. Okay? So those are the 4 organisms. Now, not only do we do that with this stool test, but this stool test also looks at how well do you digest? This thing called elastase, known as a digestive enzyme. It's produced by your pancreas. Are you producing it? We can measure that in this test. We can see whether your pancreas is doing its job. That's a huge one, right? And if you're not, got to fix that, or you're not going to fix your heartburn. You just keep taking a PPI the rest of your life. Number 6, we can see how is the immune system functioning. Meaning, is your antibodies, is your first line of defense doing its job? Because if it's not, then these issues, even if you know you have them and you treat them, they are going to return because your immune system is unable to keep up with any sort of infection process. That's really important to know for heartburn issues. And then the last one is this thing called leaky gut. Leaky gut is literally where there's damage being done to the gut lining. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Could be infection, could be heavy metals, could be toxins, could be PFAS in your water, could be poor diet, could be alcohol. Damage to the lining creates this thing called leaky gut. You can measure that very specific marker called zonulin in the stool test, and we can see that. Those are the big 7. There's one more in there that I do want to mention as well. There's a couple of food sensitivities, gluten and dairy, which we also measure with this test. The antibody that we can measure that looks at whether you might have a gluten sensitivity or a dairy sensitivity. These are 2 of the more common food sensitivities. But when you eat those foods, if you can't digest them, heartburn, okay? With all of these different things, these can be at the core, the culprit of your heartburn. So now, here's my offer to you. A free call with us to determine if this is a good opportunity and a good option for you. It's a 15 to 30 minute call. At the bottom of this screen, you're going to see a URL code. Go, set that up, free call with us. Let's at least start the process of whether this is going to be a good fit, what we do in our office, and what you have going on with you. If that's a place we need to start, then we can go ahead and move forward with that. We answer any of your questions about that. On that call as well, be aware that you may not be near us. You might be living in another state. We have patients from all over the place. Just be aware that if we do run this stool test with you and we think this is something you need, we can just mail it directly to you. Don't have to worry about where you live. That is not an issue. The real issue is you've been struggling with heartburn. Do you want to struggle with it anymore? Because traditional medicine is missing the boat on all these things, and their stool test technology is inaccurate, or it is not good enough to fit what you need. And so many of our other patients have figured this out and finally gotten better. It's now your turn. So take advantage of this. Get set up with your free call. I look forward to speaking with you and getting you on the track to fixing your heartburn.